Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you all rolling in. Welcome to our research series session. I have to say, this is one of my favorite sessions that we have because it is so practical, so practically oriented, and so incredibly helpful. I will say, it's great to just sort of get out there and peruse articles, read through a journal occasionally. But if you're working on a project, a specific project, you need to enlist the help of a librarian. We have some outstanding library services through both Carilion and VTC, and I'm telling you, they're invaluable. So if you are able to enable their services, they can do lots of wonderful things, and they'll talk about those today. Some of the things that I ask them for help with, I will, just the other day, I contacted Jane and I said, Jane, please help me. I have this deadline, and I kind of forgot about it, that I had this deadline coming up, that I really needed to do a quick lit search, a basic lit search, in a specific area. And I was reporting out to a bigger group. And I didn't have time to think about where to start or what mesh terms to use or what have you. Jane was awesome, got right on it and turned it around so super quick. So it was wonderful. And I was able to get my project details in on time. So today, we have been trying a little bit more for each of these research sessions. And as most of you should know, we team with the Research and Development Office and our Office of Continuing Professional Development to really put together a great, robust series for you all. We've got some tier 1, so that tier 1 sessions are a little more basic and just give you the information that you need to conduct research. There are some that you'll notice on our calendar are listed as tier 2. And those are a little bit higher level, a little bit beyond the basic level, just for those who are really interested and already have that foundational level of knowledge and practice. So today I'm going to introduce from our Carilion clinic research. So Jane Burnette, who is our clinical research librarian for Carilion Clinic, and she's also the CRMH hospital librarian for Carilion. And Amanda MacDonald, she is our interim library head. We've gone through some recent transition with our library over at VTC, and Amanda has been so wonderful to fill in during this time. And so she's the interim library head for VTC, and in her regular life, her regular daily life, she is the undergraduate research services coordinator for university libraries at Virginia Tech. So she's just a wealth of knowledge also. So please join me in welcoming these great resources, and let's hear what they have to say. Thank you both for being here. Thank you all for being here.
Amanda and I talked a little bit about this before this started, that the feedback I receive is that most of you have more trouble with access than actually doing your own searches. So I will be addressing some tips and tricks for doing searches, but mostly we're going to make sure you know where to go to use our resources. So there's 2 ways to access the Carilion library resources. One is through Inside Carilion. Once you're logged in, if you go to Departments and Services, and you'll go to this page. And once you get to our page, you might want to go in the upper right-hand corner, which is not showing up here at the moment, but do a quick link. And we're under H, under Departments and Services for Health Sciences Libraries. These are our popular resources, the ones people use the most often. The last 2 lines, you'll see on the last line, you'll see a link for a complete listing of all of our library resources. We have more than just databases. We have, many resources. The next to last link is going to show you how to set up a remote access account. My Athens, and you would be able to access library resources anywhere in the world. If you click the link there on the second part of that line where it says click here for instructions, it will take you to the form to register for an account. And then once you have done that, you could go to just my.openathens.net to access your account. Registration form, you just have to fill out the fields with the red asterisks. Tell them you're not a robot and submit. And once you do that, you're going to get an email address, an email from EduServe, EduServe, asking you to activate your account and set a password. You will not be able to use your account until you complete that final step. One thing to keep in mind with My Athens is that you will not be able to access any resources or full text content that we don't already subscribe to on Inside Carilion. And of course, the one thing that you can't get no matter what offsite is up to date. Also, when using our resources, it's best to use Google Chrome. Most of our resources, especially the ones through the National Library of Medicine, work better with Google Chrome. This is what the screen looks like. The only difference between what's on My Athens and what's on Inside Carilion is just how it's displayed. So which one you use is just a matter of personal preference. And you don't have to use My Athens on site. Everything is IP address authenticated when you're using a Carilion network device. So we know you use Google, and Google does have better search algorithms than most anything else. But Google Scholar is better because it doesn't have all the blogs and the newsletters and things like that that you don't want when you're doing looking for research articles. To use the Google Scholar offsite and be able to see what we have as far as subscribed resources, you would go up to the three little lines there at the top of the page, and then you would go to settings. Then you would start typing in Carilion. You're going to see these two links here, and you would save that, and you would be able to see what we have. If you have access to other libraries like RUC and VTC, then you would be able to put those in there too and search everything all at one time, up to 5 libraries. So here's we've done a search on COVID fatigue. This is a list of articles that comes up. On the left here, you can set limits, date limits, sort limits, that type of thing. We usually don't use patents, just citations. You can limit to just review articles. On the right, you'll see the links to outside resources and Carilion resources too. If you click on the e-journals at CRMH Library, it will either take you to the full text article or give you a form to fill out to get the article on interlibrary loan. You can save your articles. If you see the links underneath each article, you can save to My Library. Site will show you different formats for citing your article, like APA, AMA, MLA, that type of things. You'll see cited by other articles, related articles. So there are a lot of functionality on Google Scholar. Is what happens when you click Save to My Library. As many folders as you need. You do have to have a personal Google account to do this, and then you will be able to go back into your account and see all of your my library folders.
And just a quick tip, if you, requesting an interlibrary loan sounds kind of intimidating. It is the easiest thing that could happen. So if our library doesn't subscribe to a journal, you can just, it's basically sending an email to the library basically and saying, hey, can you get me this access? I've never waited more than, like, honestly, probably 6 hours to get a response. You can't rely on that always. I know you're not supposed to, but I don't think I've ever waited longer than that. So they're a great resource for that.
Thank you. And there are even easier ways to request articles. Always keep in mind, for anything that you need, library@carillionclinic.org. But I will show you some of our forms and other access as we go along. There's also, it's hard to see on this screen. Let's see, here we go. Oh, here we go. Export all. Now you can export to certain bibliographic citation managers, but you can also put it into a CSV file, Excel, which you can upload into other bibliographic citation managers like Mendeley and things like that. Now, PubMed, you need, just like if you were using Google Scholar, and you need to use both of these from our links on either Inside Carilion and My Athens, because that's how it knows you are Carilion affiliated, and it will let you have access to our subscribed resources. And one thing to keep in mind when you're using My Athens, let's go back just a minute on this, but for example, if you are online from home and, oh, I heard about a great article from Lancet this morning. I'm just using Lancet as an example. Don't go directly to the Lancet website and then, use the Open Athens link to get to the article you want, because our Lancet, and like a whole lot of other journals, are not available directly from the journal's website. It's from a secondary platform like Clinical Key. And you have to go through the My Athens to actually be able to get to that resource, or the full text of the resource anyway. But PubMed and Google Scholar, it's the same way. You need to use our links on Inside Carilion or My Athens, so you see that you will have access to that full text. PubMed, you see display options. You can set it to abstract. You can sort it different ways, like publication date, like there's a relevance. I think it's called best match, which is basically relevance. You can set the number to show on each page. Publishers are allowed by the National Library of Medicine to put their icons on PubMed. Unless it says free, it is most likely not free. Click on Carilion Clinic. You'll get, just like in Google Scholar, you'll get the link to the full text of the article, or you'll get a form to very quickly fill out and request the article. And one thing, please don't ever go without any articles that you need for any reason. We'll even work with time constraints with you. You're working on a submission for a journal and it's due at noon, and at 9 o'clock that morning, oh, I found this great new article, and you need that. Let us know what the time constraints are. We will do our very best to get that article for you. And there's no limit to how many articles you can request either. If you want to keep folders for your articles, or just have a list sent to you of your articles, or you want to order more than one article from PubMed at a time, click the little box on the left there at the top of each article. And when you're through doing that, you're going to go to email up at the top. This is the form you get. You're going to put in library@carillionclinic.org. Well, actually, excuse me. You're going to email it to yourself first. PubMed used to have a to and a from in this, but for whatever unknown reason, they took the from out. So email your list to yourself and then email it to library@carillionclinic.org. We'll get all the articles and send them back to you. Now, this is in PubMed from the home screen. There is a link towards the bottom for an advanced search. And also at the top of the screen, after you've done an initial search, you also see a link for advanced to do a guided search. And in this example, I have set the fields to title/abstract. Now, this is not 100% foolproof, but when you do that, you will get articles that have your topic as the main focus when you do this. So what I have done here, I've done one search for COVID fatigue, and I hit and then I did one for emergency room and added it with and. It'll add with and. You can click on the little and down arrow and it will give you two other options on how to format it. And you click on search. So this is what it looks like when you're doing a search, just a natural language search from the just the search box at the top of PubMed. It does what we call automatic term mapping. So what it does, it takes your terms and it maps them to all the different related mesh terms. So you don't really have to worry about using mesh when you're using PubMed because it automatically does it for you. So if you're doing like a really involved search and you want to break it down into pieces, you can go into advanced. It will give you your history and your search details. But another nice feature is that you can take two searches and combine them together. And of course, that will focus your topic even more. So you could take do actions right beside number 3, do add query. It will pop up in the query box, and then you can go to the next one you want to add with it, and it will ask you to add query with and or not, all the Boolean connectors. Click on search and you get add with and, add with or. You can also create an alert in here, or you can also create an alert from the left of your article list. We have different limiters here on the left. I've set, I've added type, I've added some of the ones that are associated with evidence-based medicine or evidence-based practice. You can limit to year, you can limit to English, you can also limit to humans and gender. Be really careful using the limiters for species and gender, because what happens with that, they only work as well as indexed by the writer and the publisher, or writers and publishers. And they turn that information into the National Library of Medicine, who puts the article citation, abstract, etc. on here. NLM does some adds some indexing, but for the most part, if you don't classify your article for a certain age group or a specific gender, then when somebody goes to search for it, they're not going to find it if it's limited to a specific species or gender. So this is on the left, there was, you could reset all filters. This is the box that comes up as you click each one of these headings on the left, article type, species, language, etc. You can set those to show on the search you are currently doing. A lot of times, if you use the same device, it will hold those limits until even if you go back and do a search 3 or 4 days later, it will still have the same limits. So another way to find evidence-based information on PubMed is using the clinical queries box or link. And you click on that, filter the categories from clinical studies, or, of course, the COVID-19 filter is relatively new within the past couple of years. You can filter it to different things like therapy, a broad scope or a narrow scope, but that's pretty self-explanatory. I have said this before, but it's never too late to ask for help. And don't struggle more than just a few minutes trying to find something. Even if it says we have something, there could be all kinds of different glitches that you could be experiencing that you can't get where you are using whatever device. We will just send us the citation directly, library@carillionclinic.org. We'll get it for you. Don't go without an article. Don't pay for articles. And another thing to keep in mind is if you just can't find anything on your topic, and I will be going to search for you, especially if you're actually trying to make sure that there's not anything out there on your topic because you want to do a new trial or whatever, and you want to make sure this hasn't been already done dozens of times. So
Not only that, if you are getting nothing, but also if you're getting so much, there is so much out there right now. And it's really daunting and overwhelming at times to try to find, sift through everything to see which is the most meaningful. So our librarians can really help you to narrow that down as well.
and more of your time doing, as I was saying earlier, patienty things. So, we're here to do this type of work. That's our job. So if you just don't have time, we can help you with that too. You're probably going to have more questions later. Just email us or call us at those numbers.
Thank you, Jane. Amanda, you're up.
Thank you so much. I will go ahead and share my screen. So what we're going to focus on today are a couple of things. For starters, we're going to talk about PIDs, passwords, and two-factor authentication. You will need to make sure that you have all of those set up in order to access Virginia Tech and VTCSOM library resources. So we'll talk about how to do that, where to go if you need support. And then we'll move towards the library guides and key databases that might be helpful. And then we'll end with different ways for you to request help and support and services from both Virginia Tech and VTCSOM libraries. So thinking about access first, I put in here some terms that I think might be helpful for you. So if you are working from Virginia Tech University Library's website, and at any point, maybe you use the chat message or you end up calling the Blacksburg main campus, it's really important for you to know that from Roanoke, we are considered an extended campus or you're considered extended users. So making sure if you're talking with folks in the Blacksburg campus or Newman Library, that you let them know that you're an extended user, because that can alter how we troubleshoot or answer questions or provide materials for you. Other things that you'll want to know, the first one is Hokie ID. So a Hokie ID is a unique 9-digit number that's going to be assigned to you by Virginia Tech. So you will need a Hokie ID in order to access our resources. And then from there, you'll need a PID and password. The PID is oftentimes the beginning part of a Virginia Tech email address, but not always. Think of it as a username for Virginia Tech. And then the password is that password or passphrase that you'll create when you set up your Virginia Tech email. It's going to be that password or passphrase that you'll also use for the library resources. And then lastly, thinking about things like, how do I actually log into those resources? You're going to need two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is used through Duo mobile app. So I have links throughout this presentation, I think on the following slide, that will show you where to go to get Duo mobile. And then that will work as your two-factor authentication. Basically, it means it adds an extra layer of security for you when you're logging into our Virginia Tech resources. And then later on in this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about interlibrary loan. I know Jane mentioned it as well. Iliad is our system for accessing, requesting interlibrary loan materials. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but these are just some terms I wanted to make sure that we all knew before we move forward. Okay. Thinking about credentials and logging in, like I mentioned, you're going to need that Hokie ID first. So for those of you that have affiliations, when you get that affiliation with Virginia Tech or VTCSOM, you're likely assigned a Hokie ID number, which is a 9-digit number. If you were not assigned a Hokie ID number and you think that you should have one, you'll want to contact Brenda Wolf to set that up, and I have their email address listed here. That Hokie ID number is needed in order to set up your PID and passphrase, and also two-factor authentication. I have links on here as well that lead to instructions for setting up the PID and the password and two-factor. Where do you go to get that? So you'll need, essentially these are in an important order, like I said, so you'll want to start with the Hokie ID, then set the PID and password. Then once you have the PID and password, you'll want to set up two-factor authentication. So oftentimes, just to let you know, one thing that will happen is that folks will say, oh, you know, I'm not going to use a Virginia Tech email address, so I didn't go ahead and set that up. Even if you don't plan on ever using the Virginia Tech email address, you will still need to set it up to access our library resources. So going through that process and setting it up is actually just required to access those. But again, you don't feel pressured that you have to like use that VT email, but you do need to set it up so that you have the credentials needed to log into those other resources. So now that we've talked a little bit about access, I'm going to touch on two, I think, really important tools to help you kind of think about access. The first one I just rave about all the time. It's libkey Nomad browser extension. So libkey Nomad works in Chrome, it works in Firefox, and I have a link there to a library guide that will walk you through that process of how you set up libkey Nomad. It takes like 5 minutes, but what's so important about it is that it provides this one-click access to articles from both journal publishers and aggregators like EBSCO or ProQuest. And so you can see that little image, or kind of big, I spread it out a little bit, that says download PDF from Virginia Tech libraries. That's what it looks like when you're in things like Google Scholar or PubMed or Wikipedia. Well, I should say in PubMed or Wikipedia, you see that little image. And essentially what it does is it uses paywall and other sources to open access articles. So you don't have to, if you have this set up, you don't have to then go through, you know, logging in and those kinds of things. You can just click that and it will take you straight to the article. So I think it just makes access a lot easier. And it just also helps, you know, sometimes even if you're logged in, then you know, depending where you're searching, you might have to go to volume and then issue and then page number. It really does all of that work for you. And again, if you're, you know, looking and you don't want to, you know, have to log in, this really kind of saves steps for you. So I would say if you get anything out of today's session, this is one of the two most important things. Download libkey Nomad browser extension. I think it's super important and just will save you a lot of time in the future. The second one Jane talked about as well, and it's your Google Library settings. I do have a video all the way at the end of my slides that shows you kind of how to do this, but I have the steps here as well. Essentially, go to scholar.google.com, just like Jane mentioned, click on that hamburger menu, and then click on settings, And then from the settings option, you can go to library links. And here you can see the VTC, SOM, and VT settings. So you want to make sure that you do this in addition to the ones that you have set for Carilion. That way you have everything in there that you need. And like I said, I do have a video at the end if you needed more help to walk through this. The next thing about access is if you wanted to come in person, we are in 110 to Riverside Circle. If you are a VTCSOM affiliate and you have access to Riverside 2, you can access the library, meaning swipe access outside of hours. You can access the library at that point 24/7. If not, our hours that we're open to the public are Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I have staffed hours here, TBA. As you probably noticed in our introduction, I'm serving as the interim head to the library here. We will be very soon hiring a library specialist who will be here full-time as well. Right now, I'm here most Tuesdays and Thursdays. I am also a professor and on the Blacksburg campus. So I'm teaching a class Mondays and Wednesdays there. So like I said, I'm here in Roanoke Tuesdays and Thursdays most weeks. But that VTCSOM library at vt.edu, that's that email address I mentioned earlier. You can email me directly, you can email the library. It might be best practice to email us both. And like I said, the reason is that VTCSOM library email is checked by several librarians and library staff. So you'll probably get a slightly quicker response depending if you email me when I'm teaching or something like that. But that's how you can get support and help if you need help. Hopefully, big picture, I would like to see this library staffed full-time. But I think at least through this semester, it's about 2 days a week. And then hopefully, like I said, we'll get that position filled and then we'll have people here full-time. So moving towards locating materials, so thinking about books, but also library guides and databases. So when we think about physical items that you would want to use, but I also put ebooks on here, even though I know those are digital, as well as things like laptops, equipment like earphones, iPads, things like that. You can search using what we call discovery search. This is on University Library's main webpage, lib.vt.edu. On this screenshot, you can see that I have an arrow that's showing to just books. So if you were looking for a book or an ebook, you can click just books and then put in the phrase that you would like to search. If you know the title, for example, I put Grey's Anatomy, then you could do a specific title search. The default will be keyword. And so I'm going to talk about in a little bit in terms of articles. You could leave it the default where I have marked it just books. The default is everything. So that would help you to find if you were looking for like articles and stuff as well. I would recommend for the type of research that you all are probably doing to use the medical and health science databases that we're going to get to in a moment. But I did want to point out technically you can use that. This searches many, but not all of our holdings, which is why when I think you're doing more in-depth research, it's better to go to those subject databases. The other thing I did want to point out, because I will talk about it a little bit later, is underneath that box, that drop-down arrow that says title, you'll see the word databases. I will talk about A to Z databases in a few minutes, and you can get to that A to Z database list by clicking that database link there. So once you've done a title search for a known item, like I had for the book Grey's Anatomy, this is what it will look like. You can see there that this is housed in VTCSOM library. Sometimes you will see that it's housed in Newman Library. So when we talk about that interlibrary loan request, if an item is in Newman Library, you can fill that out and then pick up the book here. So we'll get the book from Blacksburg for you if you need us to. The other arrow I have there is next to share. This is so that you know that there is a permalink to this record in the catalog if you wanted to maybe share it with a colleague, or maybe you're working with a student, for example, you could share that link. So you don't want to use the URL at the top of the screen for an item. You want to use that share link to get a permalink to the catalog record so that you have the call number and information that you need. And then lastly, what I have here from the catalog, if you wanted to be specific, after you did that title search, there's going to be on the left-hand side of your screen, there's going to be a menu. And you'll notice that I've clicked VTC School of Medicine. If you wanted to narrow it down to just items held in the School of Medicine library, maybe you needed a book immediately, you didn't want to wait for it to be delivered here from Blacksburg, you can specify by library there. Okay, so now that we know how to find books, let's talk about how do we find databases and things like that. So we have library guides that we've set up. And to get to those, you go to guides.lib.vt.edu, and you'll see that I have an arrow pointing to health and medicine. We actually have a variety of LibGuides for health and medicine. I kind of had to squeeze them down so you don't have to necessarily read through all of these, but you can see, for example, we have a variety of guides for the clerkship programs. We have one on Dynamed, we have one on disaster medicine. These are all listed in alphabetical order according to the title of the guide. And we have one specifically for the VTCSOM library as well. And so when you click on VTCSOM library, it starts, there's a variety of tabs across the top. We have information about visitor guidelines, things like that, that just kind of talk about the hours. But really what we're thinking about today are the databases. And so you can see health databases kind of in the middle. And those are the databases that we here at VTCSOM have, that we offer for those who are affiliated. And so what I wanted to point out here is that most of our VTCSOM databases, if you do not have, let's say you contact Brendel and you realize that you don't have access, you know, maybe you weren't assigned a Hokie PID and that you don't have the affiliation needed to get one. You could access most of our databases by coming in here. We do have public use computers kind of in our back right-hand corner. So you could definitely come in during those open hours of 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that some of our databases, you would have that say VTC, you would have access to. Other ones on the LibGuide might have notes that show only certain groups of people have access. So I put up to date for our VTC access, for example, that is restricted to 3rd and 4th year students, clerkship directors, department heads, things like that. So not everyone who has a VTCSOM affiliation has access to everything. If there's a database that you don't have access to everything, it will be noted from the VTC side of things, it will be noted on that LibGuide so that you know. And again, if you ever have questions or you're having trouble logging in, you can email me or that VTCSOM library email address, and we'll do our best to see if we can help you troubleshoot logging in, things like that. The other thing I wanted to point out is on our health databases, we have a lot of those that we've picked specifically for VTC that we think will be helpful. But when I mentioned to you on the library's main page, that main search box where I said there was a database link, the library has just under, I think, 800 databases. So if you have Virginia Tech, a VTCSOM access, you have access to all of Virginia Tech's databases. So there are some really wonderful, multidiscipline databases that I think can be really helpful for your research that I linked on here as well. You can find all the databases in alphabetical order, that A to Z database list, by clicking that database link underneath the search box. But some that I pointed out here that I thought you might be interested in are SciVal, Scopus, and Web of Science. These I think are just really helpful. For example, if you were looking to figure out like what institutions maybe are doing research on particular, on a particular topic, or finding, authors, maybe that would be good for collaboration. And then also just in general, thinking about research that you could get in something like Web of Science. So I just wanted to point out that yes, there are some resources that are listed for health and science specific, but sometimes you'll be doing research that is related to health and medicine, but maybe it's a little bit broader, or that, one of our other databases might be helpful as well. So you should have access to those by clicking on the A to Z database list. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how do you request materials. So library materials, but also different services that we have that maybe we haven't talked about yet. and research assistance, whether that's for a group or a lab or one-on-one. So interlibrary loan, I hinted at, and I know Jane mentioned it too. Our system that we use is Iliad. So you would use interlibrary loan if you are looking, number one, for books that are not owned by Virginia Tech, or articles, journals, chapters, proceedings, standards, those kinds of things. If you install that libkey Nomad browser extension, it actually fills out the Iliad request for you after you set up your login. I will say for that Iliad system, the first time you use it, you will need to set up a login. I have a link to the LibGuide that tells you how to do that. But yeah, it will fill it out. If you have that browser, the libkey browser extension, it fills out the form for you, makes it super, super easy. If you wanted articles, things like that, and you need them quickly, you can always email us at that VTCSOM email address, and we will place the request for you. So don't feel like you have to do it yourself. But for books, because those books are checked out to a particular person, you would have to do it yourself for books. But anytime you needed something that's in electronic, like an article, we can do that. And then you would also use Iliad if you were looking for items that are owned by Virginia Tech, but maybe not in this library. So if you were looking for an item that maybe is in our library service center, which is off-site storage from our libraries, or maybe it's in Newman Library and you want it delivered here, or something owned by Virginia Tech and available in print and you wanted it scanned, maybe you just need a chapter of a book that's in Newman. All of these would be good reasons to use Iliad for getting that item quickly and efficiently. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about as a service that you might not know about is University Libraries Collaborative Research Grant. This one is actually linked on a Google site rather than directly from the library's page. But essentially, if you were interested in serving as a co-PI and you wanted to research with a librarian, we run this 2 times a year. I think the next round is expected to launch in March, and we fund up to $5,000 for research projects. So again, this is just something that we've started in the last couple of years. So there's more information on this page, but I definitely would encourage you, if you want to partner with the libraries, this is a good way to get some funding. The next thing is the Open Access Subvention Fund. The Open Access Fund is really to help subsidize article processing charges. So, we're really hoping that you all will publish in open access journals, and this subvention fund helps to cover that publication cost. There are guidelines, thinking about where we publish and things like that. So if you have questions about guidelines, I have links here to the guidelines request form. The request form is something that you would fill out if you were hoping to get funded. Like I said, there are guidelines thinking about, like, if you already have funding and things like that, or if the cost is a little bit higher, I'm happy to answer those questions for you. So there's a link on here. But again, like I said, if you wanted to email me directly or VTCSOM, we'll do our best to kind of help you answer those questions. Sometimes there will be additional funding costs. So VTCSOM does have an additional form that you fill out in case you would need additional funding, and are requesting that they would help you with that. And then our evidence synthesis services is something else I wanted to highlight. We have a librarian on our team that is head of this unit that supports evidence synthesis services. These would be if you were interested in doing like a scoping review or a systematic review, meta-analysis, something like that. We offer a variety of support for that. We could do instruction, workshops, as well as different levels of partnerships that we could do with you in order to kind of help make those projects successful. So definitely think about reaching out or looking at the support that you might need or want. And like I said, we're happy to help you any way that we can. And so I just wanted to end here with saying that we have a lot of services. I highlighted what I thought would be really helpful for you, but we have a lot of other services too. So if I didn't say something that you were hoping, definitely feel free to ask us. I also didn't highlight, I mentioned early on, if you wanted to do one-on-one consultations, I'm also happy to offer workshops, instruction sessions, training, whatever it may be. If you think that the library can help, email me directly or email us at vtcsomlibrary@vt.edu. And the last thing I'll show you before we hop to questions is that I have tutorials here. So things like that Google Scholar connection and things like that. So if you wanted to watch those videos later, you're welcome to do so. So I will go ahead and stop my share in case you all have questions.
There were a couple of questions about access in the chat, and I just wanted to mention if you're for both of these libraries. So if you are a Carilion employee, you always have access to Carilion libraries. If you are a Carilion employee with either a faculty appointment and or a PID, you have access to both Carilion and VT libraries. So that is a wonderful, they're both wonderful resources. And depending on what your needs are, you may use one or you may use both. So bear that in mind. Any other questions? And yes, your location should not matter, your physical location, just as long as you are employed by Carilion for Carilion access and I either have a PID already or are a faculty member and can get a PID. You have access to VT. And then I believe there are some resources that have been dropped into the chat as well. And then we're going to include those resources, and Heather did a great job of providing some links that were discussed throughout this presentation. She's also going to include those with the presentation on our website. I know they're all embedded within these great presentations, but sometimes it's easier to just grab the links and go into the presentation itself. So questions, comments, concerns? Okay, hearing none, you have contact information for both Jane and Amanda. You can always feel free to contact our office for any of our presentations, and just a reminder of how to contact our presenters, or if we want to engage or collaborate, we are happy to do so as well. So without further ado, have a fabulous rest of the day, rest of the week.